To begin, welcome to this deep dive on judicial discretion and the scrutiny surrounding high-profile immigration release orders. In this video, we will explore how judges decide whether to release individuals pending immigration proceedings, why high-profile connections can trigger heightened public scrutiny, and what transparency and accountability should look like to preserve trust. Now, let's set the stage with a quick roadmap of what's ahead. Before we proceed, it is important to clarify that this content is educational and does not constitute legal advice. Laws, rules, and procedures vary by jurisdiction, and every case is fact-specific. Viewers should consult qualified legal counsel for advice regarding any particular situation. With that said, we can now move into today's agenda. Next, here is our agenda. First, the core tension between judicial discretion and public trust. Second, the mechanics of release decisions in immigration contexts. Third, why high-profile connections trigger scrutiny. Fourth, safeguards and transparency practices. Fifth, comparisons and visual diagrams to clarify the process. Sixth, quick knowledge checks. Finally, key takeaways and next steps. With this roadmap, let's examine the core tension. Moving on. The core tension is that judges must balance due process and individual liberty against public safety and national security. In immigration release decisions, the law directs judges to focus on whether the person is a flight risk or a danger to the community. However, when an individual has personal or professional ties to powerful political figures, the public may suspect unequal treatment. Even if the judge follows every rule, the appearance of influence can erode trust. Therefore, transparency and rigorous documentation become essential to preserving confidence in the process. Now let's look at how these release decisions actually work. Now let's break down the mechanics. Immigration release decisions typically begin after detention, followed by a bond or release hearing. The judge evaluates two core questions. Is the individual a flight risk, and are they a danger to the community? To answer these, the judge weighs risk factors such as criminal history, prior compliance with immigration orders, community ties like family and employment, and evidence of stable residence. Mitigation options include electronic monitoring, regular check-ins, curfews, or other supervision. If risk remains too high, the judge may detain the individual or set a high bond. If risk can be managed, the judge may authorize release with conditions. Importantly, personal status or political connections are not valid criteria under the standard legal framework. Next, we visualize the ecosystem. At the center is judicial scrutiny in high-profile immigration releases. One branch captures the objective criteria: criminal history, community ties, flight risk, and danger. Another branch addresses appearances of influence, including political ties, media attention, and public perception. A third branch details safeguards, such as voluntary recusal when appropriate, comprehensive written findings, appellate review, and audit trails. The transparency branch includes open dockets, timely and accessible orders, and data reporting on outcomes. Finally, we show outcomes ranging from release with conditions to high bond or detention. This mind map helps connect legal standards to the broader environment of accountability. Moving forward, compare a standard case to a high-profile case. In a standard case, scheduling is routine, media interest is low, filings follow typical patterns, and documentation is sufficient at ordinary levels of detail. In a high-profile case, timing is scrutinized for acceleration or delay, media attention is substantial, and there may be additional filings or statements. Documentation must be exceptionally clear to demonstrate adherence to precedent and criteria. Oversight bodies and the public pay closer attention, increasing the need for transparency and auditability. Furthermore, this table summarizes the key criteria. Criminal history helps gauge danger and compliance, relying on records of convictions, pending charges, and probation status. Community ties inform the likelihood of appearing in future proceedings, based on family, employment, and time in the community. Immigration history shows past compliance, including prior appearances, voluntary departures, or removals. Risk mitigation measures allow judges to manage risk through tools like electronic monitoring, bond, and check-in schedules. Together, these factors frame the decision without reference to social status or political connections. Now let's address appearances. Public confidence depends on the perception that justice is applied equally. When an individual with political connections receives release, even a properly reasoned decision can appear biased. Such perceptions can erode confidence in the system. Consequently, transparency, robust documentation, and clear articulation of legal standards become even more critical in politically sensitive cases to demonstrate that the same rules were applied without preference. Next, here is a practical transparency checklist. Publish timely written findings that cite controlling precedent. Disclose potential conflicts and consider recusal when appropriate. Use standardized risk factors consistently across cases. Clearly document the rationale for alternatives to detention or the decision to detain. Maintain accessible dockets and clear logs of release conditions. Finally, ensure periodic audits and public data reporting on outcomes to support accountability and learning. Meanwhile, this pie chart illustrates common sources of public concern in high-profile immigration releases. The largest share is perceived bias, reflecting fears that connections can influence outcomes. The next portion is lack of transparency, highlighting the need for clear findings and accessible records. The remaining share is inconsistent outcomes, which can stem from variable application of standards or differing case facts. Visualizing these concerns helps target reforms toward the most impactful areas. As a quick checkpoint, here is a question. Which factors should properly drive an immigration release decision? Option A, political connections and public relations impact. Option B, criminal history, community ties, and likelihood of appearance. Option C, media attention and social status. Option D, pressure from advocacy groups. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. The standard, legally relevant criteria include criminal history, community ties, and likelihood of appearance. Political connections, media attention, social status, or external pressures are not appropriate decision drivers. For our second checkpoint, consider this question. In a politically sensitive case, what is the best way to preserve public trust? Option A, shorten the order to avoid controversy. Option B, keep all details confidential. Option C, provide exceptionally transparent, well-documented findings tied to precedent. Option D, defer entirely to media narratives. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is C. Providing exceptionally transparent, well-documented findings that tie directly to legal precedent is the best way to preserve public trust. Shortening orders or withholding details without legal basis undermines confidence, and deferring to media narratives is not an appropriate judicial practice. Next, this timeline walks through the life cycle of a high-profile release matter. It begins with detention, followed by the filing of a motion for release, and the hearing. The judge issues an order with findings, after which media coverage may intensify. Oversight or appellate review can follow, culminating in outcomes such as affirmation, modification, or policy adjustments. This sequence shows where transparency and documentation can strengthen trust at each stage. As we distill the discussion, remember these takeaways. First, apply criteria consistently with a focus on flight risk and danger. Second, neutrality matters, and so does the appearance of neutrality. Third, high-profile cases call for exceptional clarity and documentation. Fourth, transparency, audits, and data reporting help sustain public trust. Finally, justice must remain blind, particularly when powerful observers are focused on the outcome. To summarize, we examined how immigration release decisions hinge on flight risk and danger, not status. We discussed how high-profile connections amplify scrutiny and why appearances matter. We covered safeguards and a practical transparency checklist for maintaining trust. We also used diagrams to clarify decision pathways and public concerns, followed by brief knowledge checks. With the recap complete, we will close with a brief message. Finally, thank you for watching. If you found this useful, please like the video, share it, and subscribe for more deep dives. Share your thoughts and questions in the comments, and let us know what you would add to the transparency checklist.